There was a legend that circulated around the trailer parks on the outskirts of town, where the roads turned to gravel and the streetlights were few. They called him the Whippet Wrangler, a man who had once been normal, maybe even good, before the Whippets turned him into something else, something twisted. Nobody knew his real name. Some said he used to be a mechanic, working on cars by day and partying hard by night, chasing highs that dulled his rough life. Nitrous oxide was his drug of choice. But over time, the constant huffing changed him. His mind shattered, and what was left of his sanity dissolved in the clouds of gas he inhaled. He vanished one day, his trailer abandoned, the floors littered with empty canisters. That's when the disappearances started. At first, people thought it was just the typical kind of trouble, someone running away or getting into it with the wrong crowd. But then it became clear that they weren't just leaving, they were being taken. Kids, mostly. Young drifters. Their last known whereabouts were always near the woods where the old man used to live. That's where the Whippet Wrangler was said to roam now, dragging a rattling bag of spent canisters, his head filled with fumes. He stalked the woods at night, looking for his next fix. People said you could hear him coming before you saw him, the faint hiss of escaping gas and the echoing metallic clinks. If you were unlucky enough to hear it, it was already too late. One night, a group of high school kids, Danny, Leah, and Chris, decided to test the legend. They thought it was all just stories, made up to keep kids from wandering too far into the woods. Armed with a couple of flashlights and too much bravado, they ventured to the edge of the trees, laughing nervously. "I bet he's just some homeless guy," Chris said, swinging his flashlight in wide arcs. "If he's even real." Leah wasn't so sure. The woods felt wrong that night. The air was thick and heavy, and every creak of a branch made her jump. But she wouldn't back out now, not in front of the others. They pushed deeper into the woods, the sound of their own footsteps the only thing they could hear, until it wasn't. A soft, mechanical hiss pierced the air. At first it was faint, like an air compressor somewhere far away, but then it got louder, closer. "What's that?" Danny asked, his voice shaking. Leah shone her flashlight around, the beam bouncing off trees, the dark trunks casting long, jagged shadows. The hissing grew louder, and with it came another sound. Metal tapping against metal, like cans being kicked across the ground. Chris's face went pale. "We should get out of here." But before they could move, a figure emerged from the shadows. He was tall and gaunt, with sunken eyes and skin pulled tight over his skull. His clothes hung loose on his bony frame, and strapped to his back was a filthy sack, bulging with the shapes of canisters. His fingers twitched, and from his lips a metal nozzle extended, attached to a long, coiled tube that disappeared into the bag. He took a deep drag from it, the hiss deafening now. The Whippet Wrangler's eyes rolled back into his head as he inhaled, a wheezing giggle escaping from his mouth. He let the canister drop from his lips, dangling as he staggered toward them. "Got any more gas?" he slurred, his voice wet and gurgling. His steps were unsteady, but there was a hunger in his eyes. "Need more to breathe." The kids froze. Chris tried to back away, but his foot caught on a root, sending him sprawling to the ground. The Wrangler's head snapped toward the sound, his bloodshot eyes widening. With a sudden burst of speed, he lunged, knocking Chris over and pinning him to the ground. Leah and Danny screamed, their legs frozen with fear, as the Whippet Wrangler yanked out another canister from his sack. His movements were jerky, desperate. He shoved the nozzle toward Chris's face. "Just one more. Hit!" the Wrangler rasped, forcing the canister into Chris's mouth. Chris struggled, but the Wrangler was impossibly strong for his frail frame. The gas hissed out, filling Chris's lungs as he thrashed under the Wrangler's bony hands. Leah grabbed Danny's arm, pulling him back, snapping him out of his frozen state. "We've got to go," she screamed. They ran, not daring to look back, but they could still hear it, the hissing, the gasps, and that eerie, wheezing laugh echoing through the trees. When they finally made it back to the road, panting and terrified, Chris was nowhere in sight. They told the police what had happened, but no one believed them. "Another runaway," they said. Just another kid lost to the woods. But Leah knew the truth. She could still hear the sound in her nightmares, the hiss of gas and the laughter that followed. Sometimes when the wind blew just right, she swore she could still hear it outside her window. The faint clink of metal canisters and the whisper of the Whippet Wrangler still hunting for his next breath of gas.